A peninsula with shimmering landscapes, bathed in sunshine and surrounded by water. This is the unique view that is on offer to visitors coming to Cape Cod in Massachusetts, a place situated on the east coast of America. Discovered in 1602, it was not until 1620 that Cape Cod went down in history. This is where the first settlers came to take time out before arriving on the continent. While the Cape has enjoyed prosperous times thanks to its fishing industry, it has always been a somewhat isolated land of unspoiled nature, home to over 200,000 people. When America's greatest 20th century realist painter, Edward Hopper, discovers Cape Cod in the 1930s, this region has already been an artist's haven for quite some time. For Edward Hopper, Cape Cod is a revelation. He loves everything about it: the landscape, the light, the architecture. At 48, Edward Hopper, who is just starting to become successful, finds the ideal place to express his inner state of mind and capture the very essence of rural America. For 40 years, Edward Hopper spends every summer here, painting over 100 canvases. What fascinates the artist is first and foremost the unique setting of the Cape, with its sand dunes all the way up to the furthest northern peninsula.
The geography is very special here. Cape Cod formed as a result of the glaciers. Maybe 20,000 years ago was the peak of the glaciers. And these dunes have been shaped over time by winds, waves, tides. You know, both weather and climate are shaping the landscape of Cape Cod.
These wild expanses of sparse vegetation fascinate Edward Hopper. It is in this desolate landscape that he surprisingly feels at home.
What he found, and what a lot of artists found at that time, was this opportunity to hear the wind in the dunes, to see the sand moving, to be alone. I see a kind of a melancholy in his work, and this is exactly the kind of feeling that you can get in a long walk. It's a contemplative landscape.
What Edward Hopper delights in even more is Cape Cod's light. Thanks to it, the landscape comes alive and colors bloom. A few kilometers south of the dunes is Cornhill Beach, a unique place revealing all the splendors of this unique luminosity.
It's one of the few places in the east coast of North America where you can watch the afternoon and evening sun set over the water. Cornhill is a cliff. It's a high hill, much higher than most of the other hills around, and it's always had this row, this rhythmic row of peaked roof Cape Cod cottages that are washed with light. They're facing the sea. Particularly in the late season, there are long, long shadows. And those shadows, with a painter like Hopper, those shadows are full of color. They're full of the purples and blues. It's not just green.
The view in the dusk light inspires his Cornhill painting, which he undertakes in 1930. Edward Hopper never tires of this light, which is like nothing he has ever seen. He is noted saying, "Here, the shadows are bright and luminous." Edward Hopper loves Cape Cod so much that in 1933, he builds a cottage a few miles from Cornhill Beach and sets up his studio in front of a breathtaking sea view. The place is isolated, but only a couple of minutes from the town of Truro and its 2,000 inhabitants. Truro is the smallest town in Cape Cod. There are some shops, a church, and above all, the peacefulness of days gone by.
Definitely, Hopper was attracted by the solitude, the privacy. There were only 500 people living in the town. Truro was at the end of a long economic downturn that started after the peak of the fishing industry in 1850. But he enjoyed it here because there was a connection to the past here. The houses here were traditional rural American houses, and he liked that.
In his work, Edward Hopper wants to conjure up the history and the identity of his country. At this period of time, American artists were hoping to invent a style of painting drawn from reality and freed from European influence. And what better way to tell America's tale than through its local architecture?
Before the 19th century, what you were likely to find would be the traditional Cape Cod style, which had shingle sides all around, a gable roof like this house has here. But beginning in the 19th century, as places like Truro became more prosperous, people began to build more elaborate houses. And what we're looking at here is the Greek Revival style. It was supposed to harken back to the days of the Greek ideal of democracy. There was a sort of a patriotic element to this.
With its false columns adorning the facades and doors, this green Renaissance style conveys national pride and makes houses look important. This architectural style enables Edward Hopper to express his vision of what he thinks is a truly American work of art, while at the same time exploring the interplay of shadow and light. During the summers he spends here, Edward Hopper continues to discover Truro from the eyes of his car, which he never leaves.
And even though Truro is a small place, walking 4 or 5 miles to find a place is not that easy. But on the day that he wanted to paint something in particular or find a new place, he would get into his car with Joe, and they'd drive until they found a place that was satisfactory, and he would park.
As astonishing as it may seem, Edward Hopper often sketches from his driver's seat. Several canvases begin from this point of view. As he continues traveling around Truro, Edward Hopper discovers a few kilometers from the center, Paymet Harbor.
Right now we're on the south bank of the Paymet River, and we're approaching the mouth of the river, which is out that way. The reason I like it is that it's peaceful, it's quiet, and it's natural.
Hard to imagine that Paymet River Harbor was in the 19th century a mecca for the fishing industry. When Edward Hopper comes across this place, all activity has long since ceased. Only a few simple houses dot the landscape, but this is what captures the painter's attention, the ordinary and daily life. It is for him a way of getting to the essential.
Hopper was a painter who tried to simplify a scene, and I think he found here some natural material for doing that. Houses far apart, houses near the water, not a lot of things around, and if there were too many things around, he took them out of the painting. He thought of himself as trying to create a kind of art that transcended the ordinary.
Over the years, the painter is to reveal the subtle and magnetic beauty of Cape Cod. Through his paintings, Edward Hopper celebrates this small part of America. And the people of Truro will, in their own way, pay tribute to the artist. A few miles south of the Truro Lighthouse stands the Marshall House. It has been in the family for 5 generations.
This house is located in the most southerly part of Truro because there are so few houses, and many of them are nestled up long driveways. When Hopper painted the house, it was white. But the first time we had to repaint the house after we owned it, my son, who is now the present owner of the house, asked his dad can we go to that pale, pale yellow. And his dad, of course, agreed. So the house became yellow. So when you look at the house right now, it looks pretty much like the painting. I did not see the real painting until the exhibit in Boston in '07. It's still very emotional to me. For the first time, I wept because I didn't think it was going to be that gorgeous.
Today, Cape Cod's landscapes make us think of Edward Hopper's paintings, and through them we discover by ourselves this unforgettable atmosphere, which is the artist's signature, as if fiction became reality.